So you say that you've had this nightmare for 74 days now?
Mr. Grayson, the school counselor, asked me with an eyebrow raised.
And how exactly do you know that it's been 74 days? Why have you been counting?
I didn't answer his question immediately. Instead, I absently stared at his desk, seeing the picture he had of his children, a boy and a girl, neither of which could have been older than 7. His wife was conspicuously missing from the picture. I knew that this man wasn't going to believe me. It wasn't his job to help high school students dealing with chronic nightmares. No, that was the job of the parents of the children. However, I would never get a full-fledged therapist. With the salary of my parents and my inability to get a job even at age 18, it was out of the realm of possibility.
I'm just good with numbers.
I responded finally.
That's not the problem here, sir. The problem is that it's the same dream every night.
I sighed in slight annoyance as I saw the man lean back in his chair and glance down at his clipboard, reading through my school documents. No doubt he would have found my history of anxiety. Yet another hit to my credibility.
Tell me,
He answered after reading through the entire report.
what happens in these nightmares of yours? Are they related to school? Or what, exactly?
With every word he spoke, I could smell a hint of cigarette smoke in his breath. It was nearly enough to make me gag, but that was far from the biggest problem. Describe my nightmares. Why, I had tried to forget them every time I woke up, however impossible it was. While most nightmares fade from one's memory rather fast, these ones were impossible for me to forget. They had invaded nearly every facet of my life. When I was in class, I frequently froze up and went into a cold sweat as I randomly recalled every last detail of the horrifying vision.
It starts with me on a strange chunk of land,
I explained to the man.
it seems to be floating in an expanse of black nothingness.
As I spoke, a shiver ran down my spine. I knew what happened next, and an explanation would bring me straight back into the state I was in the nightmare. Scared, alone, and entirely helpless.
I'm holding my father's longsword, the one I took classes to learn to use,
I continued.
but there's always the shriek of a girl. I always look up to see someone, a female classmate I think, held up by these smoky, disgusting black tendrils.
I pursed my lips, the shriek of the girl echoing through my mind as I explained.
And who is this girl?
Mr. Grayson asked, straight-faced.
You said she's a classmate, so what is her name?
I knew by the look on his face that he thought this was merely a nightmare born from my anxiety, but I knew that wasn't the case. It felt far too real to be a dream. It was almost as if I was witnessing events that had already happened in the past.
I don't know.
I responded, staring down at the carpet, my eyes tracing the whorls and stripes of the pattern.
I just know that she's in one of my classes.
The school counselor nodded, writing down something on my file.
What happens next, William?
I grimaced slightly at the use of my first name. I always preferred to go by my last name, James, but it seemed that this man either didn't know, or frankly didn't care, and I wasn't in a position to correct him.
The tendrils began to pull on the girl's limbs.
I couldn't help but whimper slightly, the sounds of ripping and tearing flesh reverberating through my skull.
And soon, another tendril comes in and stabs her through the stomach.
Mr. Grayson raised an eyebrow before nodding, writing something else onto my file.
And then what, William?
He asked.
How does this dream of yours end?
My jaw began to quiver as I remembered the last moments. The worst part of it to me.
I feel a flash of rage,
I explained.
I rush forward to the source of the tendrils, a horrible mass of smoke.
My entire body shivered before I shook my head and bit down on my lip, hard.
And then a tendril emerges from the mass,
I hissed.
and stabs me in the stomach, just like it did the girl. I drop the sword, and drop to the ground, and die.
Mr. Grayson didn't respond this time. He merely nodded and wrote down one last thing on my file.
I think we're done here, William,
He told me.
I'll talk to the principal about this, okay? We'll see what can be done.
Ha! Like the principal could do anything about recurring nightmares. like anyone could. I just nodded and stood up from the chair, walking out into the silent hallways of Charleston North High School. The chattering of students had all but vanished. I had to spend an hour after class just to talk to my counselor about something that couldn't be fixed. My mother's idea. She never did listen to me. I stepped outside of the school and found a group of students standing outside, giving me a strange look. I sighed and began walking down the steps of the school. It was then that I heard a voice coming directly to my left.
Everything's going to change.
I immediately turned and saw what looked like a puff of smoke, but no figure that would have been able to speak to me. It was a deep, male voice with no source. A shiver ran down my spine as I continued down to the parking lot, stepping into the driver's seat of my car from 2001. It started up with a sputter, and I began to drive home, the voice echoing through my brain. Everything was going to change. Hey guys, this is Limit Testing Audios. This was a bit of a different idea that I had. I gave an option on Twitter to vote for this, and it got overwhelming support, so I hope that you all enjoy it and didn't hate it as much as I hated recording it. This was probably the hardest video I've ever had to record so far. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!